You guessed it, welcome. Here we are at Stratified in our humble abode and in front of our humble GR Corolla. Yes, we've been tuning these cars, and there was just a fun aspect to them and a playfulness, and the fact that they're kind of like the STI replacement with the drive modes and the torque split and just a rally bred thing that means that these cars are right up our valley for another development build. So we want to take you guys on a journey of where you start with a car, where you should expect to end up, what works, what doesn't. We're going to be tracking this car, we're going to be living with it every day, and we're going to be using it for just normal everyday car things while having a good time. So already the parts have been coming in, and I'm super excited to share what some of those parts are, what we've done with tuning that we're going to be applying to this car as well. So you're going to see all of that. However, we have a track day coming up, and that track day looks to be wet. Now, the plan was to actually run our development BRZ for the beginning of the year and then switch over to this car as we put some more parts on it and also run it on track. But it may be that I'm going to have to run this on Monday in a few days. I want to be prepared. So right now it's bone stock, it's done its break-in, so it's time to do a few simple things. First, we're going to be doing an oil change. The motor has about 1,000 kilometers, 600 miles. We're going to be using the Liquid Moly StratifiedAuto AA, Asia and America, the 5W30. So we're going to go for a heavier weight oil because of the track use that we're going to put this car through. We've got an oil filter, and we will be doing some mild heat insulation on the exhaust to prevent it from overheating the diff. Some very mild stuff to begin with if we need to take this car out on track on Monday. There's a lot more coming, so definitely keep watching. I made it pretty easy. I got a filter, and it's got a little oil cooler, a water to oil cooler in here. You can see the transmission. There's the oil pan. This is, if you're gonna take this car rallying, you probably wanna get something a little bit sturdier. If not, then you'll be fine. You can also see that some of this ducting that's done here to cool off the PTU. So this points right at the PTU in the center. The exhaust is sizable in diameter, and it looks like a high quality piece. I like it. This is your, obviously your rear differential. The clutch pack lives in here. It's finned for cooling, but an offending member of heating this up is this exhaust. So this is where we're going to be putting that heat shield on, and as well as shielding the sensor itself. I've got another way of shielding that. And then there's your three outlet exhaust system. Suspension wise, also this is a pretty, we've seen these setups before. With the trailing arm, it's a multi-link rear end with springs and shocks that are separated. So this cup comes out to put in springs, and I recommend that you replace both springs and shocks if you're going to do springs. Of course, we've got some goodies coming in for that. Yeah, nice and accessible. And let's drain some oil. So one of the first things I did is I want to make sure that the sensor that's sitting inside the diff and picking up the temperature is not going to get heat soaked from the exhaust itself. So I've just wrapped the bottom of the sensor in some fire sleeve to keep the heat away from it. And now I'm going to put the sleeving on top of the exhaust itself. as long as it's not touching moving parts. As I promised you guys, if it was gonna rain, we're gonna take the GR, and it rained. So this is completely bone stock GR so far. We've got a lot of parts coming, but it was important actually to take the car and kind of baseline it at our local track here, Mission Raceway, bone stock. What can I say? It's quite capable stock. It feels good. The engine is maintaining a consistent power, which is exactly what we do with our tuning as well. That's our goal, to maintain consistent power even under demanding track conditions, just like OEM in that sense, but obviously with additional power. The brakes are not fading. We're doing a time attack style where it's 3 hot laps and 1 warm-up, 3 hot and 1 cool down. With these guys at Speedy Goat, if you're local to the Lower Mainland and you want an awesome group of people to go to the track with, Speedy Goat, shout out to them and to Ryan. As you can see, the car is getting some attention. So anyways, weak points of the car. When the wet, the ABS goes into a sort of an ice mode once you engage it. Not super great, not a lot of feel in the brake pedal that way. But if you stay out of that ABS zone, it's obviously much better. The tires were they're only PS4s, so good in the wet, especially new as they are right now, but as it's drying up, they start to squirm around a little bit. Transmission feels good. Everything really feels good in the car. And once we get this shakedown done, then it's time to throw some parts at it, some tuning at it, and see how much we progress. So super excited to have it out on track. We're just 600 miles into the ownership of the car, 1,000 kilometers, so just past its break-in. It's got its oil changed, and there's absolutely no indications of overheating of the rear diff. So we've got that heat shield that we installed, and we also heat shielded the sensor. No indication so far of any issues in that regard. We'll keep you guys updated, and of course, if we run into any issues, we will solve them. And I'm going to enjoy some more time, some more seat time, because there's no replacement for that. If you want someone that tunes your car properly, that give you the right advice, then you definitely want someone who takes the car and uses it just like you guys do. So that's what we're out here doing. All right, so we're back from the track. Overall, the car was honestly really great on track on our Mission Raceway. The track is not terribly long. It doesn't have a lot of elevation change, but it's got a lot of hard work for tires and brakes. So I'll start on that. First of all, when it was wet outside, I noticed that the ABS was a little bit difficult to manage. The car had what you'd call sort of an ice mode. If you engaged ABS a little too hard, the brakes felt like they didn't really want to stop you. That's an ABS programming issue, not a brake strength issue. However, once it dried up, the brakes stayed very true and very powerful. These are completely stock brakes as of right now, and this is not even a circuit edition, so it doesn't have the extra duct in here to pull air in, but they were strong. There was absolutely no fade. Another aspect of the car that was very good was the power. The power on the stock tune stayed there, it stayed consistent. We're gonna get this car on the dyno very, very shortly here, and we're going to, of course, calibrate ourselves with our own tune. It was very good throughout the day, so it didn't let me down. The modification that we've done to the exhaust has stayed together. So here we have the heat shield, the heat blanket shielding the differential, and well, we never had any issue with the all-wheel drive system. So drove it in 50/50 track mode, no overheating, no issues, pushing the car hard, and we have this heat wrap and we have the sensor up here that is also heat protected. we've tuned this car stock. We've baselined it, against the stock calibration, and we did get a good bump in power, but especially torque. So what's interesting is that we've had a number of these cars on the dyno now, and they've all had some sort of an intake installed. And comparing our car compared to the other ones, and I'll show you guys the graphs in just a bit, you can see that with the stock intake, and we had a car that just had an intake as a power mod. With the stock intake, there's two things that you notice. First of all, you notice that the top end drops off more. So the intake or the intakes that we've seen on here, the Venturis, are able to gain power up top. And the other nice thing about this car is that it's got a pressure sensor pre-turbo. And that tells you how much of a restriction an intake is. Now, just looking at the stock intake and stock airbox here, so it's got a pretty sizable elbow going into the turbo, so it doesn't look to be too small. Then you've got your air filter, which is just an OEM paper air filter. The diameter is not terribly large, and the entry point here, it even has, if you can see, a little kind of snorkel here right before the math in there, and then the filter just fits right in. So not much of a restriction going on the top of this airbox. However, the bottom gets a little bit more interesting. So you've got, first of all, this inlet here. When your flapper door, I'll call it the flapper door in the intake here, is closed, your only intake air is coming through this small opening in the airbox. And again, reading the sensor that is pre-turbo, I can tell you that this flapper door opening here at the bottom, and I'll just demonstrate how it opens in just a second, but this flapper door opening at the bottom significantly reduces the restriction of the intake. Couple that information with the fact that we've seen the aftermarket intakes perform quite well on this car. What I want to do is I want to do a few tests here on the dyno with modifying this stock intake to see if indeed it has a restriction. So already through tuning, we can adjust when this flapper door opens. Stock, it opens at 4,000 RPM. And if you're pushing for more boost, especially early on, this is definitely a restriction. So of course we make adjustments for that in our tuning. Now, if you want to see the operation of this thing, it's kind of neat. So I'm gonna suck on this, which is exactly what this is doing. When the solenoid opens, there's vacuum pressure across this line. It's new rubber at least. So this door opens, and it basically opens right here, and then the car pulls air from down here. Now it's not the best place to pull air, just because you've got your radiator and a little bit of heat build up in that area. So I've seen the aftermarket intakes move this, create snorkels in here and so on. But just with the stock intake, I want to test the theory that indeed the intake is a restriction beyond just opening this. So what we're gonna do here is that we're going to actually just use the top of this intake box. We're gonna strap on this stock air filter first of all, and basically look at what kind of gains we can get by just having the top of the box and the filter pulling in air versus this entire bottom piece, in the name of science and just observing how much of a restriction this intake is on its own. We are in our bone stock GR Corolla in terms of hardware, because we really wanted to get the baseline done for this car and then build our tune from a stock vehicle. You've seen our previous video of a car that was more modified than this. So this is starting from the very beginning, and there's a lot to go through here. So hopefully you can keep your guys' attention, and I'll try to keep it very much to the point. During the process that we tuned this car, EcuTek actually released a much awaited version 2 RaceROM, and this gave us a very good feature, and that is well, actually multiple good features. We've got launch control, we've got flat foot shifting, and more importantly for tuning, we've got map slots. And map slots allow me to do this. So I can take a 93 tune or a pump gas tune and put it in slot 1. You can see I hold down the cruise control cancel button, shows me what slot I'm in, and then I can have an E30 tune, for example, or a more aggressive tune in slot 2. So now I'm in slot 2. You can always verify which slot you're in by holding the cancel button. It will jump to 2000 RPM. The car can be running. So for example, I can turn the car on here. So here you go, I'm holding it down. There's slot 2. And then there's slot 1. That's something that we can do for you guys now because of this new software release. So not only did we tune the car on the OEM tables, but now we've got this tuned on the new EcuTek V2 RaceROM, and we can do that for you guys as well. It makes it really easy to swap between maps and swap between blends. On to the meat and potatoes of the tune. First of all, we have the car here tuned on the OEM tables on pump gas. What you see compared to the stock tune is that we gained a whole bunch of torque, but up top, we didn't really gain much in terms of performance. And the biggest reason for this is because this car is quite high strung. It's a 1.6 liter 3-cylinder, and it is very octane sensitive. So we saw that it was knocking in this area and had to keep it safe. It is definitely faster, and it will punch harder. It'll have smoother boost control and all that on pump gas, but the top end was a little lacking. So now we did a little experiment on the top end. The first thing we did here is we just removed the air box. We basically lifted it up from the lower housing and we kept the air filter on. Lo and behold, this kind of mimics what an intake does on the car. Of course, not as optimized as something like an E-Venturi, but it gives you an idea. And without changing a tune, we picked up 13, 15 horsepower in the top end. Yes, that means intakes are good for this car. The top end flow is optimized, and it also shows you the flexibility of the tune. So you can throw on a part, and even without optimizing, although I always recommend optimizing, you're going to get an increase in power. So because of the way that we set up the tune in these cars to have flexibility, I was able to do another test, and that is to throw in some ethanol in the tank, E30 to be exact, and then run for fun the pump gas tune. Look at this. The torque, where we made the gains before, has remained pretty much the same. However, the top end is there. So this is, again, no hardware changes. This is just putting some ethanol in the tank on our pump gas tune. So we picked up about 22, 23 horsepower in here, and that's because there's an adaptive ignition system and an ignition protocol in this car that allows it to add additional timing if it doesn't sense any knock. And this is a strategy used by the OEM, but this is a strategy that we also use in our calibrations. So you run higher octane fuel, it's going to perform better up to a certain point, because we don't want to be super aggressive for pump gas tune, but there is some nice leeway. Now we're gonna jump to the next slide here, and this is showing you ethanol tune, which is the most powerful variant without changing any sort of hardware on this car. This is maximizing it. It's making 316 wheel horsepower for very nice and smooth torque and power curve, and this is comparing it to stock. So now you've picked up about almost 50 wheel horsepower over the stock tune with no hardware changes whatsoever and just tuning running ethanol. And again, this tune is optimized for ethanol. Finally, this is the comparison of the pump gas tune, which is the faint line here, our pump gas tune, and then our ethanol tune. Notice that down low here, the torque is higher, but it's not as high as this top end. You saw, of course, how even the pump gas tune picks up due to the flexibility that we built into our tune. It picks up some horsepower, but now when we properly optimize this for ethanol, the entire power band picks up. So this is really, really nice because with the new software from EcuTek, which is rolling out with all the tunes we send out to you guys, not only do we have the ability to give you map slot switching, so you can switch your map slot based on what fuel you have in the tank, making it really easy to go from pump gas all the way to ethanol with just a flick of the switch, and of course a change of fuel. But also we've really optimized the boost control. So this is now fully optimized on the new EcuTek software, and you can see how smooth that boost is. And we did a lot of work in the background to optimize this, and you're gonna feel it during a full pull. You're also gonna feel it every time you come into boost at any point in the RPM band. So super happy to share these results with you guys. It really shows you how well the engine can perform, how nice that horsepower curve is. We're peaking power very, very close to 6,700 RPM here, which is super really for an engine this small. The power doesn't fall off. Some of that is thanks to ethanol, but a lot of it is thanks to how we are able to set up these calibrations. So what's next? Well, there's a lot to still do in terms of hardware changes. So we're going to start putting parts on this car, and we're going to show you guys the process of what one part at a time does, what you can expect from it, and how the tuning mixes in with all this, of course, to optimize it. So if you got any questions, any inquiries, we're always here to talk to you. We're going to be doing some more track time with this car as well, because it's a ton of fun on track. And yeah, keep up with the series. Give us a call if you got any tuning inquiries or are looking to optimize the tune on your car. And until next time, cheers.